Welcome to the Evolution of Self. I'm your host, Isabel Palacios, and this is the Taking Back Your Power podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Taking Back Your Power. I'm Isabel Palacios, and I wanted to talk about love and relationships. I am very much aware of the current state of love, relationships, dating in 2024, going into 2025. My goodness, we are halfway through this crazy decade. I want to kind of give a message of hope and kind of a renewing of your mind, of your opinions around love, around relationships, because there is so much noise. And I was once somebody who fell into the noise, the limiting beliefs, the fear around relationships, marriage, all of it. I think it's so easy to see other people's experiences, especially the negative experiences, and kind of paint your own perception with a very wide brush. And even your perception of others. We can tend to be very jaded when it comes to love. I mean, it's kind of like you jump from one extreme to the other. Sometimes you will be in this very Disney and this very fairy tale kind of idea of what love and relationships are. A lot of us kind of grew up with that. I think when you're young, you're very naive and you believe in the fairy tale and the perfect white wedding and everything perfect, right? Like a Pinterest board. And then when you go through things in life and you deal with certain people and experiences, you start to see the opposite of that image, and then you become jaded. And that happens pretty quickly. It also doesn't help that we have social media, and social media, especially places like TikTok, can be notorious for people just sharing and oversharing and putting all their stuff out there, right? And then you kind of, especially if you're younger, you're like, wow, this kind of aligns with what I went through myself. And so I'm going to kind of take this person's experience and see it as my worldview now. And that is a very dangerous place to be mentally, because you are not living your life according to you or your needs. You are kind of living it more so from other people's experiences. That's just a word of caution. Whoever you're listening to, be it me, be it your favorite love dating guru, be it your mom, be it your dad, be it whoever, your older siblings, aunts, whoever wants to give you advice, your friends, always remember that your experiences are your own and their experiences are their own. And no two experiences are exactly the same, even though they may seem like they overlap, they may seem like they are very much the same. They're not always going to be the same. One person's story is not going to be your story, but we can change our perspective and change the way we view things and change the way that we go about and make decisions in our life so that they will hopefully end up in the result that we want, right? It's kind of like building a house. You start off with a plan and then you start laying down the foundation, and then you go wood by wood or cement block by cement block. And then you go and you build that, you create the bones, and then you go in and insulate, right? So you have to start somewhere, and eventually, right, it's leading to a certain point. This is how I like to view dating and relationships, especially when you're single, is that if you don't have a blueprint in mind with how you want your dating life to go, or the type of person that you want to be in a relationship with, or the type of person you must be in a relationship, then you're just kind of be all willy-nilly and go in whatever direction everyone else is going in, or you'll just end up in the same direction your friends are going in, or your family, right? Or continuing generational curses. If you feel that your family has had a generational curse, maybe there's a lot of divorce in your family, maybe unfortunately, maybe there's abuse, maybe there's cheating, maybe there's all types of stuff in your lineage. If there is that type of generational trauma, you have to make the decision to stop it right where you are and be the curse breaker. And being the breaker of generational curses is never easy. It's never straightforward. It's going to make you question a lot of who you are and what you want out of life, but it is going to help you tremendously when it comes to getting to a different result. So you could be the one that's breaking the generational curses right now in your lineage. You could be the one that's starting something new, and you can choose better. The number one thing that you should do when creating a plan for your dating life, whether you have been having not so great experiences up until now, whether you are just starting to date, whatever. You can start fresh, you can start new whenever. Divorce, cheating, heartbreak, all these different things that you go through in love, in life, you can start new today. You don't have to wait till a certain date. You don't have to wait till you're perfect. None of that. We can start anew today as you are listening to this episode. So number one is take your experiences into account. Or if you don't have your own experiences in dating, take the experiences of others into account. I think I learned a lot about relationships and what I wanted in relationships by what I saw other people doing or not doing. And I said, I don't want that. It's kind of like the TikTok trend where people are posting their significant others doing something not so nice or being rude or snippy and then saying, oh, may this love never find me kind of thing. I would see certain dynamics going on around me and I would say, I do not want that. May this love never find me. As you are seeing what you don't want, you can focus on what you do want. And if you went through a tough relationship or a toxic relationship, you realize, I don't want that, right? A person who is healed or a person who wants different from their life realizes if they have been in a cycle of toxic relationships and decides to break it by saying, I am not going to go back into those behaviors, into that trauma that made me choose a toxic person to begin with, right? Not blaming any victims or anything. But once you've been through stuff, you're like, that's what I don't want. So number one, decide what you don't want. Number two, decide what you do want, what you do need. And this is not only from your partner, your potential partner, but also from the dynamic that you have with that partner. So a lot of people will automatically go to maybe the job that their partner has, right? I want them to work in this industry, or I want them to make this much money, or I want them to be like this and that. I want them to be 6'5", blue eyes in finance, whatever, right? All these things, of course, I'm not going to say don't focus on the physical. I think you should be physically attracted to your partner for a happy relationship. But I think above all, it's really important to focus on the intangible things. For example, if I were to get sick, I would want a partner who shows up in this way. If God forbid a family member died, I would want a partner who showed up in this way. I would want my husband to do this. I would want my wife to do this. If I was going through a hard time, I would want my partner to show me compassion, love, empathy. I would want somebody who would be able to go through the difficulties of life with me and be a partner with me. Get clear on it. Enjoy writing this down, because if we don't get clear on things, we're just going to take in whatever comes our way, whatever person shows us attention. And that is not what I want you to do. Thirdly, I want you to identify your limiting beliefs or the mindset that you have around love. And the reason why I want you to write down the things that you do want out of a relationship is because I want you to be aware of any little voices, any limiting beliefs, any anything that comes up when you think of that, right? Especially if you have been hurt in the past, especially if you're stuck on an ex, especially if you have struggled with love, you will probably have thoughts that come up and say, this isn't possible. There is no guy like this. Those thoughts are going to come up. And I like to say that's the enemy talking. That is not rooted in truth or in love. Those things are rooted in ego and pain, in trauma. And we're not going to operate from woundedness, because when you operate in woundedness, you end up going back in cycles that are never ending. So we're not operating from woundedness. We are going to operate from our most healed, loving, holy space, right? The best space that we can operate from. When we look at those limiting beliefs and we are aware of our belief system, I want you to ask yourself, does this belief system help me to get to where I want to be? Probably not if it's negative, right? If it's telling you, oh, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve that type of person. Those people don't exist. Everyone cheats. Everyone's this, everyone's that. You have to get to this place where you take responsibility over your belief system. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to give up, right? And I'm just going to, whatever. Instead of saying that, we're going to actually go in and decide now, I am going to make a change. I'm going to change my belief system. And I am going to be the best version of myself. Why? Because when I am the best version of myself, I am in my most healed, most happy, most aligned state. What does that bring us to? I have a negative belief system around love, and I don't want to have it anymore. And work on myself from my most healed state, not from my woundedness. I want to approach romance and love, not from my woundedness, but from the best version of myself. So what happens from there? You work on yourself. You work on yourself first. If you've gone through breakups, if you're newly single, stay single. Don't go on dates. Don't start operating from this place of woundedness. If you feel like you're still in this place of woundedness, it's time to work on yourself. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to break generational curses. If it were easy, our society would look a lot different than what it looks like now. The dating scene would be a lot different. But I think that if you put God at the center of your transformation and you pray about it and you give it to God and you surrender to God, I think that's the thing I've learned the most about being in my feminine energy, is that it's kind of like this natural laying down of my arms and laying down of my defenses and just letting God take over. And that's what really helped me whenever I was healing and whenever I was single and I wanted a certain relationship and I was finally tired. Remember, I talked in the last episode, you have to be tired enough of your current circumstances in order for things to change. So I was tired, and not only tired of my circumstances, but also tired of doing, or dating or trying to find the one. And I was just like, whatever. And I will get comments from women. Sometimes when, I would be coaching my clients, I would get those comments of, yeah, but Isabel, I'm already this old. Or I already did this and it didn't work out. Or where I live, it's hard to find. If you feel like you come up with excuses, it's another sign that you need to focus on healing and work on yourself. Become the person. And when I say become the person, I don't mean become somebody else or become a caricature of what you think you should be, but become the best version of you. Become the happiest version of you, the most aligned version, authentic version of you. And when you become that most beautiful version of you, which is already inside of you, you start to see, wait a minute, I do deserve good things. I do deserve this type of relationship. I do deserve a partner who's going to love me. And you are worthy of love. You are worthy of a beautiful relationship. But what's really important is that you get to this place of peace about your singlehood. that you get to this place of saying, whatever God's plan is for my life, I want it. And God knows your heart. God hears you. God is listening all the time, whether you know it or not, whether you think it or not. That's something I've learned in my experience. You have to surrender. All these things that you want, make them known to God. And I did this through a prayer journal. I have a video on my YouTube channel, linked down below, about how to create a prayer journal. And that's what I did in my single season. I got clear in my mind, in my mindset of what I didn't want, of what I did want, my beliefs, my limiting beliefs, and I asked God to take over, to help me with my mindset. And this was a very specific prayer that I did. I said, God, please let anyone who is not the person for me make it so clear, because sometimes when you're single, you have so many options, right? You have people wanting to date you, take you out, showing interest, situationships or talking. I didn't want any of that. I didn't want any of the situationships. I didn't want any talking. I wanted to be clear that God said, this is the person for me. So I asked God, please let it be so clear and so obvious. And I didn't know it would happen so quickly. I didn't know it would happen so seamlessly and so obviously, but it did. God works in mysterious ways. So all of this is to say that there is work that you can do yourself to get to a better headspace, to always work on yourself, on your goals, on your hobbies, on what you enjoy, on your health, on your fitness, on your mental health. There's so much we can do physically, mentally, emotionally, going to therapy, all those beautiful things, right? But at the end of the day, when you release everything, you give it to God and you put your future spouse in the hands of God, it's just a game changer. It's so crazy, beautiful how things happen in God's plan. And we have free will. We can choose to go along God's plan, or we can choose to create our own path, right? Sometimes when we lean on our own understanding, actually most of the time, we get lost, we get veered off track, we get deceived. Always, always, always practice discernment when dating. If something doesn't feel right, stop it. Do not date that person anymore. Do not answer their phone calls. Do not answer their texts. Do not engage if something does not feel right. And a lot of times people are going to say, well, Isabel, what if that's just my limiting belief or my fear, this and this and that? Your triggers are your triggers for a reason, right? They're there to remind you of something. If you are triggered by anything or anyone, it is for a reason that there's something you have to pay attention to here. I'm not saying anytime you're triggered to go off running and hiding, but practice discernment. Always ask, is this an irrational fear of mine, or is this God speaking to me intuitively? Because God will speak to you through your intuition. You have to give yourself time. Give yourself space. Give yourself understanding. Because you're not going to figure everything out in one day or 1 month or even in a year, right? It can take years for you to come to this place of knowing and where things click, especially in dating, especially in loving yourself, especially in your singlehood. But that does not mean that there's not something waiting for you at the very end. And just because you've been single for all these years does not mean that tomorrow you can't meet the love of your life. You may think you're going to meet the love of your life on a dating app, but you can actually meet them tomorrow at the grocery store or on a business trip. There is no limit to what God can do in your life. And I don't think you should limit God. You shouldn't limit your life. You shouldn't limit your experience just because things would go a certain way, or just because we are living in a time where people are less likely to want to be in relationships, or less likely to get married, or less likely to have babies. Whatever it is, you have to trust in the process of your life. And one of the biggest things that's hard to trust is the unknown, is when our ego is so used to what it's used to that anything that veers off of that seems like a threat. That's a really huge thing that happens when you have been used to dating a certain type of person and then you meet someone who is not like that. And even though they're a great person, you're automatically going to feel that they're wrong because they don't feel familiar. That's like your lizard brain trying to control, and the lizard brain loves what it can predict. If it can't predict it, it's like, oh my God, it's terrible. All that being said, the main thing, my dears, is to know who you are and don't settle. Don't settle for anything less. Don't settle out of loneliness. Don't settle out of the scarcity mindset that tells you you'll never find anything better, because you probably will. The main thing, though, is to work on yourself. Stop falling into old patterns. Delete your ex's number off your phone. Stop going back to your ex. Stop entertaining situationships. If you are somebody that wants a serious relationship or marriage or family, you have to start carrying yourself as such, and don't be afraid of scaring away those that are scared by that. Because the ones that aren't scared by that are the ones for you, is the one for you. And your standards and what you want matter. Don't let anyone talk you out of your standards or tell you your standards are too high. The people who tell you your standards are too high are those that cannot meet your standards and know that they do not meet your standards, and thus want you to lower your standards so you will give them access to you. And you should never give anybody unwarranted access to you. You have to treat yourself, your body, as a temple. Standards are there for a reason. If I didn't have standards, I would be probably really unhappy in life. I would probably, who knows? I don't even want to think about my life if I didn't have standards in dating. I would not be with the amazing man that I am with today, who is, oh my goodness, my soulmate. That is my best friend. That is my teammate in this thing we call life. He is my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. He loves me exactly how I am. He has never put me down. He treats me every single day as if I were a prize and as if I were a queen. And I am treated like a queen. He is never afraid to show respect and love for me and our family. Know your worth, know your value, and live your life as such. So thank you so much for watching, my beautiful angels. I appreciate you. If you like this podcast, please be sure to subscribe in whatever platform you're listening to. Leave a positive rating, leave a comment. I love to hear from you. And as always, remember this: no matter who you may be in this life, no matter what you are going through or what you look like, always remember your true beauty, your true worth, and your true power always come from within. I love you, and I will see you in another episode of Taking Back Your Power. Bye-bye.